What's up, everybody? In this video, I'm going to go over how to fill out a seller contract for real estate. So I get a lot of people that reach out to me and they got an offer accepted by a seller and they don't know what to do next. So all you have to do is fill out an agreement, send it over to them. You want to walk them through the agreement to make sure that they understand everything, and then hopefully they'll go ahead and sign and you can get your deal closed. So I'm just going to walk through in this video how to actually fill out the contract so that you can fill out your agreement and get your next deal signed ASAP. So I'm going to use a deal that we recently bought, for example, and I'm just going to show you line by line how to fill this out. Now, this is our agreement that we use in North Carolina. So if you're in North Carolina, you can probably use the same exact agreement, and I'd be happy to send it to you no matter where you are. But I would recommend that you run it by your attorney, your closing attorney, before you actually start using it, just to make sure that everything looks good to them. Every state kind of has different rules and regulations, so I just want to make sure that everything is good to go before you start using the agreement. Or if you find another agreement online, I would recommend you do the same thing. So just to double check and make sure everything looks good, run it by your closing attorney first. So first things first, you would just find the property that you're looking to send an offer to. And then we would just double check to make sure that the owner is the correct owner, first of all, because sometimes people pose as the owner of the property and they're not actually. And then you just want to fill out all the basic property details and make sure everything looks good. And then you would send it over to them. So I'm using this property here as an example. So what you would do first is you would look up, so this is a city here, obviously. This is the address and this is the city and state. So first things first, I would look up, if you didn't know already, I would look up the city of your property and then I would type in county. So I type in city, state, and then type in county so that we can figure out which county this property is in. So now we figured out it's in Wayne County. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to pull the data directly from the county so we can make sure it's up to date. So you can also do this on websites like PropWire, PropStream, stuff like that. But they're also going to be pulling their data from the county. So I typically like to go direct to the county to make sure that the data is 100% accurate, because sometimes there's a delay when you're working with these third-party websites. So then I would search up whatever the county the property is in. I'd search up that county, and then I would search up real property search and see what comes up. Typically, the first result here. Oh, I would also include the state, because there's some same counties in different states. And then I'll click on this first result here, and this is what we're looking for. So this is basically how you search the county records, and I'll show you how to do that. Typically, I like to search by the address. So they should give you an option to search either by name or by address. So you can use the seller's name if you want, but typically I like to search by the address. And then we would just type in the number and the street name and then search. And so we just bought this one, so it still hasn't updated on the county yet because we just bought it like literally a couple weeks ago. But this would have the current owner, unless, like I mentioned, if there's a very recent sale, it might not have them. But typically the properties we're working with, people have owned these properties for multiple years. So you're usually going to get the correct owner here. So then all we would do is we'd be looking at the owner information and a couple other details here that I'll show you here. So first things first, we'd be looking at the owner, and you can also choose this link down here, which takes you to the property record. This shows some more information about the house itself. And don't get overwhelmed. We don't need all this information. We just need a few basic things. So first things first, again, we would look at the owner, and sometimes there's going to be multiple owners listed. And that's something you would want to bring up with your seller. For example, in North Carolina, like I said, every state has different rules. But in North Carolina, even if the husband and wife are not on the property record, they both have to sign in order to sell the property. That's just a North Carolina state law for whatever reason, but some states are different. So you should know your rules and regulations. And if you don't, just check with your closing attorney and they'd be happy to point you in the right direction. I just wanted to mention that, like I said, in North Carolina, even if, for example, if this person had a wife, she would still need to sign in order to close the sale, even though she's not listed here on the county record. So just wanted to mention that. Even if there's only one person listed here, just make sure you ask your seller, just be straightforward with them. Just be like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, are you married by chance? Just wondering, because in whatever state, for example, if you were working in a state that does require both spouses to sign, then you could just tell them, hey, this is just per the state law. We're going to need both signatures in order to close the sale. So if you don't mind, could you give me your husband or your wife's email address and their name? And then we can go ahead and get this knocked out together, and there won't be any issues when it's time to close. So just want to make sure that you cover all your bases up front, so then when it is time to close, you don't have to backtrack and deal with any issues that you might not have addressed up front. So that's the first part. We just want to make sure that we have all the owners on record in the agreement. So then what we would do here, I'm just going to use this as an example. We would fill out this person's name, and let's just say for this example, they're single, and so it's just them. So if there were multiple owners, you would fill out all the owners right here. And this is on the seller tab. So I can rewind just a little bit. So all I did here is deleted this and put in the seller's name. And you can also do this in as you can see, I messed up the typing, but you can also do this in DocuSign, PandaDoc, Right Signature, any one of those e-sign platforms. You can do the same thing I'm doing here. I'm just using Google Docs to keep things easy. And then for the buyer, you would put either your name or your company name. So that's the next line. So I'm just going to do 123 Main Street LLC as a buyer. So you would either put your LLC or company name, or you can put your personal name. It doesn't matter if you don't have a company name just yet. That's fine. You can just put your personal name there. And then the property address is the full address. So you can find that on the county records, which is right here, or you can just find it from the property that you're working with. Now you want to make sure you just include the full address with the street address, the city, the state, and the zip code. So just include everything there. So we can just copy and paste. And then I would just replace that blank with the address, and it actually showed up weird there as like a different font. So I'll just fix that real quick to make things look cleaner. And then next we'll go to legal description. So this still looks kind of weird. Sorry about that. So this is very important. So this is why we looked up the property on the county records, because you want to make sure you include some sort of legal description, which could either be option A is the actual legal description itself, which is right here. It's typically a combination of letters, numbers, and words that just describe the property. And you can either take that exact legal description, like I mentioned, or you can take something that's called the parcel number, which is up top here. I would do one or the other, or sometimes both. But you don't need both. Just I would do one or the other there. So the parcel number or the legal description. And the reason being is sometimes there are multiple addresses that actually pull up like multiple properties, or I'm sorry, the same address actually pulls up multiple properties. And we've actually run into that before. So the one way you can be sure about which property you're going under contract on is to just include the parcel number and or the legal description, because every property is going to have a unique parcel number and a unique legal description. So every single property in the United States, as far as I know, has a very unique parcel number and a legal description. Like for example, if there were a property right next to each other, they might have a bunch of these numbers similar, but they would have at least a couple numbers that are going to be different. And so when you include the parcel number or the legal description, once again, it's just making sure, just basically covering your bases and making sure that you are under contract on the exact property that you're trying to go under contract on. And there can't be any disputes down the line, like maybe you went under contract on the wrong property or something like that. And it might sound crazy, but it's actually happened to me and a bunch of people that I know before. So you just want to include that to make sure that it's the exact property that you are working on. And also it makes it a little bit easier for your closing attorney too, when you have this included in there, because then they can easily search this on the county records by the legal description or the parcel number. So just make sure that you do include that. It is a little bit tedious to get that information, but it does go a long way in terms of making sure that you have the correct property under contract. So next blank here is the purchase price. So this would be whatever your offer price is. I'll do 99, 500, and I won't do any cents, but you could put, if your offer was very specific, for example, you could do 99,575 cents, for example. But you don't have to include these extra zeros there. I was just messing around, but you just want to put in whatever your offer price is here, whatever you agreed on with the seller, you plug it in right here. And then the next blank that we have in our agreement is the closing timeline. And so typically we either do 30 or 60 business days. And we include this part right here after buyer has received current approved photos of the property. Current approved photos of the property. And we do that because we wholesale remotely. So we're not actually seeing probably 9 out of 10 properties that we're locking up. We're not actually seeing the property until after we go into contract. And so the reason that we don't start the closing timeline until we see the house is because let's say we had 30 business days in the agreement, for example, for closing. And let's say maybe the property was tenant occupied or something, or maybe the owner is still living there and they went out of town or something. You never know what's going to happen. But let's say we had 30 business days on the agreement to close, and it took us 14 business days just to get photos of the property. Then that only gives us 2 weeks to actually execute the closing on the house. And typically we like to give ourselves about 30 days to actually complete the closing. And so we like to include this little sentence after the closing time frame, so that both parties know that this closing time frame doesn't start until we actually have a chance to see the property. And so like I said, it's up to you what you put here. I would put no shorter than 30 business days. and I probably wouldn't go any longer than 90 business days. That'd probably be the longest I would do. But you can put whatever you guys agree on. In some cases, sellers need some more time to actually move out of the property, or if there's tenants living in the property, sometimes they need some time to give them like a 30-day notice, and then the tenants need some time to actually move their things out. So I'll just fill it in for this example. Whoops, I'll fill it in with 60, and then we'll go on to the next part. So the rest of this, there's nothing else to fill out. So again, we filled out the seller name, the buyer name, which is just you, your company, and then the property address here, the legal description here, the offer price, and then the closing time frame right here. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and this is where we include other provisions. So if there's anything else you guys agreed on, like for example, if the seller wanted to keep the refrigerator or the stove or something, if they wanted to take that with them to their next house, you could easily include that here. So I'll just delete this. You could say, for example, seller will keep the fridge and stove and the piano in the living room, for example. It could be literally anything that you guys might agree on. You just want to include it in here so that it's in the agreement and it's all in writing. And that way there can be no kind of back and forth if anything were to arise. And you could say, just point to your agreement, say, hey, look, this was included in the agreement from day one, and we both signed off on it. So that's where you would just include anything. It could be something random like I included here. It could be something like if the buyer will agree to purchase the property with the tenants, but they require the seller to send them a copy of the lease agreement before closing, for example. So it could be anything else you guys agree on here in other provisions, or you can just leave it blank. So you don't have to do that. That's only if there's some other agreements that you made that aren't included in the standard agreement on page 1 and 2. And then next, we always want to put an expiration date on our contract. That's just so we can kind of keep things moving, keep a little bit of sense of urgency, and make sure that our offer does have an expiration date so that we can't be shopped around, for example. Because if you send a seller a contract and there's no expiration date whatsoever, then first of all, they might not think you're serious. Second of all, that gives them unlimited amount of time to think about your offer, shop it around. For example, if they're getting other investors calling them and you gave them an offer for whatever our offer was here, for example, $99,500, then they can go tell all the other buyers who are contacting them, hey, I have an offer for $99,500. If you can beat that, I'll sign with you. And they can just kind of tug you around and just kind of waste your time, honestly. So I would always give them an expiration date. I would say don't give any longer than 7 days. So typically we like to do like 4 or 5 business days. So for example, if we were to send someone an offer on Monday, we would tell them, hey, look, we'd love to work with you on this property, but we can only guarantee this price until Friday, for example. And we typically don't go longer than 7 days at the absolute maximum, but we also don't want to rush people at the same time. So some people I know, they'll say, oh, this offer is only good like right now. If you don't sign today, then offer's off the table. We don't like to do that. It is a big decision and people do need to think about it sometimes, but we don't want to give them days, weeks, months. Like we don't want to give them too much time. So like I said, we typically don't give more than 7 days. It's up to you exactly how much time you want to give them, but I would recommend doing 7 days or less as your deadline. So what I mean by that is if you sent it out on today's the 12th, if you sent it out on the 12th, then you would set the expiration for the 19th or earlier so that you have a definite deadline that they're either going to give you a yes or no. So then we would just fill this out. For example, I'll do what I just said. I'll do the 19th. And we also have the time as well, 7 p.m. Eastern on whatever date. And then as you can see right here, if the offer is not accepted by this date, the agreement is invalid and void. And then the last thing is to walk the seller through actually signing it. And then we include this part for them to fill out their contact information just so we can forward all this to the closing attorney and make things easy for them. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. And yeah, hope this helps you get more deals. Thanks for watching.